Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Janashalakaya Unnitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pachatadi Santarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Lord Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining us today on this very special day as we celebrate the launch of Iskcon Toronto's this year's Rathayatra Festival, the 51st festival in Iskcon Toronto. So before we speak about Rathayatra, I'm sure many of you might know that Rathayatra is actually an annual procession where Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra are actually taken out of the temple and they go on public routes to give darshan and mercy to the masses. But before we speak about the origins and significance of Rathayatra, first I thought we'd speak about who is Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra and why they are in the forms that they are. So it's a very sweet story, and we could go on for hours and hours and go into very details, but we have limited time, and I know everybody wants prashadam after this. So we'll just give you some highlights and summaries of the stories and pastimes of Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. So once there was a king in Satyayuga named Indradumna, and he ruled from the capital of Avantipur, which is today in Ujjain, India. So he controlled all the lands, everybody was peaceful, tranquil, everyone was happy, there was an abundance of everything. But there was one issue. The king had a void in his heart. Although he had everything materially, wealth, fame, power, everything was fine, but it was all useless. Why? Because he didn't have Krishna. He really had a deep desire to serve Krishna directly. Now, Krishna, of course, is very favorable to his devotees, especially those that show love, pure love to him. But he also tests his devotees. He doesn't make it easy. So anyway, the king was lamenting in this way day after day after day, this deep desire. He was not happy. So one day in the king's court, an old pilgrim suddenly arrived. And he said, I know where the Lord is. I have seen him in the deity form known as Nila Madhava. So the king asked, where is this Nila Madhava? And so the pilgrim described that he is on the top of a mountain called Niladri or Nilachala, which is in Puri, Orissa today. And suddenly that pilgrim disappeared. So the king got excited and he immediately dispatched his chief Brahmin, his chief priest, named Vidyapati. And he said, go find this deity of Nila Madhava. So Vidyapati left and he spent days and weeks going through the forest and the jungle, trying to cut through all of these forests to try to find Nila Madhava. After about a month's journey, he arrived at a tract of land that he thought was the right place. And there he met a tribe of Sabaras, these are pig herders, and there he encountered the chief tribesman named Vishvasa. Vishvasu invited him into his home and gave him shelter, and after some time, Vidyapati married the daughter of the chief, Lalita. So as he was residing in Vishvasu's house, he was seeing that Vishvasu was going every night. Every night he would spend all day at night and come home at noon the next day. And he would be smelling of wonderful fragrances like sandalwood, camphor, musk. So Vidyapati wondered, where is he going? And he asked his wife Lalita, what is he doing every night? He's not going to bars or parties, is he? That didn't really happen. So Lalita was sworn to secrecy, but she revealed the information to her husband. She says, well, my father goes to a secret place, and I'm actually supposed to keep this a secret, but he goes and worships Nila Madhava, the deity. When Vidyapati heard this, he was like, oh, I am definitely in the right place, and he got very excited. But of course, because it was a secret, Vishvasu did not want to reveal where the Lord was. But with some convincing by Lalita and himself, Vishvasu finally agreed and said, okay, I will take you there, but on one condition. You have to be blindfolded. So Vidyapati agreed, but he was very smart because he was the chief Brahmin in the king's court, and he was a smart man. So what he did was he took some mustard seeds and they hid them in his dhoti. And as he was traveling blindfolded, accompanied Vishvasu, he started dropping these mustard seeds, thinking that the rainy season's going to come very soon, and these seeds will sprout into plants, and then I will be able to find my way back to Nila Madhava. So they were traveling in this way, and they come to a cave. Vidyapati is able to now remove his blindfold, and there he sees a beautiful deity of Nila Madhava. And he dances in ecstasy and pays his obeisances. Now Nila means blue, and this deity was so beautiful, he was blue like a blue sapphire. So then Vishvasu started doing his normal offerings. He would get flowers, roots, etc. And he was doing these offerings, and suddenly the Lord spoke. And he said, my dear Vishvasu, you have been serving me so wonderfully for a long time, but you've been serving me very simply. Vidyapati heard this and was shocked. He says, well, I'm going to be cheated from the service of Nila Madhava? This cannot happen. How dare this happen? But you know, Krishna has his own plans. He has his mysterious ways. So immediately, Vidyapati was bound by Vishvasu that you can't go anywhere. You're not going to tell anybody, certainly not the king, where my Lord Nila Madhava is. However, Lalita came to the rescue again. She pleaded with her father and said, you know, please let him go. So finally he did, and Vidyapati quickly journeyed back to Avantipur to see the king and informed him of the discovery. So the king became very excited. He was overwhelmed with ecstasy. He quickly gathered all his army, and he invited any and all citizens to come with him to go see the deity of Nila Madhava. And so they used those mustard seeds that had now become plants to find the cave where Nila Madhava was. And the king opened the doors, and what did he see? The deity was gone. He was not there. So the king almost fainted and then became angry. He said, I am going to arrest this Vishvasu. He must have stolen and hidden the Lord. So he arrested Vishvasu, and then there was a sound from the sky. And it said, release this Vishvasu. He did not steal me. He did not hide me. I have disappeared of my own will. Now you must build a temple on the top of Nila Hill. And I will manifest myself there, but in a different form, not as Nila Madhava. So Vishvasu was released. The king started building a wonderfully elaborate temple, spent much time on doing this with all the gold, jewels, etc. to construct this temple. And after that, he desired Lord Brahma to consecrate and bless the temple, so he went to Brahma Loka. At that time, people could travel between planets, especially devotees. So he went to Brahma Loka and he asked Lord Brahma to please bless and consecrate this temple. But Lord Brahma said, no, I cannot do this, because where you have constructed the temple, Sri Kshetra, in this place, the Lord is going to manifest himself on his own. I cannot do that. And in fact, Nila Chala, or Sri Kshetra, has manifested by the Lord's own internal potency. So you go back to earth and wait for the Lord to manifest himself. So King Indrajumna came back to earth, and when he came back to earth, everything had changed. because Lord Brahma's one day is worth 4.32 billion human years. So you can imagine if he was even just there for a short time, how much time had passed on earth. So the king had lost everything. Everyone he knew, everybody was gone, but still he was very determined. He wanted to see the Lord and he wanted to serve the Lord. So he listened to Lord Brahma and said, yes, I will wait. And he patiently waited and waited and waited. The Lord did not appear. So the king said, I am so unfortunate, I'm so useless, I'm going to give up my life, I'm going to fast to the end. So he started doing this, and in the middle of the night, the Lord came into his dream, and he said, go to the sea. I have floated in a wooden form as Daru Brahman. You can get me there. So the next morning, the king went to the seashore, and lo and behold, there was this big piece of wood, and on there were 4 auspicious symbols: the lotus, the club, the conch, and the disc. So the king gathered a bunch of men, big men, elephants. He said, let's lift this piece of wood so we can now carve the deity. But it would not budge. Nobody could move it. Tens of elephants, men, all together could not move it. So again, the Lord came in the king's dream, and he said, do you remember Vishvasu, my devotee? Now notice that the Lord did not forget Vishvasu. Yes, he hid from him, but he did not forget his devotee who was serving him for so long. So he said, go find him, and he will lift me up and put me on a golden chariot. So Vishvasu was found, and he came to the seashore, and with prayers easily picked up Daru Brahman, put him on a golden chariot, and they took that golden chariot to the Gundicha temple. So there was 2 temples built, the Jagannath temple and the Gundicha temple. So they took this Daru Brahman there, and then the next step, of course, was to carve the deity. So the king called all the expert artists and sculptors to come to carve the deity. But when they came, not one of them could even touch Daru Brahman. And when they lifted up their tools and chisels, they shattered to pieces. So the king thought what to do. Then a very old Brahmin artist came. It is said in the Narada Purana that this was Vishvakarma, the architect to the demigods. And he came and said, I can carve the deity of the Lord, but I have one condition. I will be closing the doors and carving these deities, and I will be doing this for 21 days. No one can come in, no peeking, no helpers, nothing. So the king agreed, and the doors were closed. The sculpture started chiseling. You could hear the noises, bang, 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 carve, 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 right? But after 14 days, there was no sound. Suddenly it was silent. The king became very anxious. He said, well, that was an old artist. You never know. You never know what happened. So he wanted to open the doors. Everybody advised him, don't. You made a promise 21 days. Don't open those doors. But the king was very anxious. Against all advice, he went, forcefully opened the doors, and what did he see? He saw 3 unusual forms. The artist had disappeared, but he saw 3 unusual forms of Lord Jagannath, Lady Subhadra, and Balaram. And these forms apparently seemed unfinished. They didn't have legs, toes, fingers. So the king was shocked. He says, I have made a great error. I have made a great offense. I must end my life. What have I done? Right? And so he immediately decided to fast. Halfway through the night, Lord Jagannath appears to the king, and he says, I am the Lord. This is my form. I have manifested myself in this way to show everyone that I can accept things without feet, legs, or hands. I can accept offerings by my devotees simply by my transcendental senses. So you can see that Lord Jagannath is actually Lord Krishna himself. And actually the word Jagannath means Lord of the universe. So one can ask, well, still, why is that form, why are they those three forms? So there's actually a pastime that ties to these forms. Krishna was in Vrindavan. He spent his youthful years in Vrindavan. But then he moved to Dwarka to fulfill his kingly responsibilities. And there, one day, Rohini came, the mother of Lord Balaram, and she was speaking to the queens, all of Krishna's queens, behind closed doors in a secret place. And she was telling them all of the pastimes of the gopis and gopas and Radharani with Lord Krishna, all those wonderful, affectionate, loving exchanges. And Krishna came to the door and was hearing this. And when he was hearing this, he became overwhelmed with love and separation. And when that happened, his eyes grew wide. Tears came from his eyes. The hair stood on end. And his limbs contracted, his arms and legs contracted into his body. Such was his ecstasy. So a few moments later, Balaram came, his brother, and saw this, and he also heard the vibrations, and he became in ecstasy as well. So now they're both like this. And then Subhadra arrives. She says, what's going on here? What's happening with my brothers? And she also hears this. And you know, that love of separation, she also became in ecstasy. And so, as this was happening, somebody came around, and that was Narada Muni. He seems to be everywhere, right? He gets to the right places at the right times. So, he witnesses this scene in these wonderful forms of Krishna, Balaram, and Subhadra. And as they come back to their normal forms, he asks Krishna for a benediction. He says, please appear in these forms again somewhere in the world. And Krishna says, yes, I will do so. And this is where he appeared in Nilachala, Jagannath Puri, in these forms. Isn't it a sweet pastime? And so the other thing is Vishwasu and the descendants of Vishwasu, the Sabaras, actually serve Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra in Jagannath Puri to this day. Although they were pig herders, they're devotees of the Lord, Krishna accepts their loving service. So the next part, now we understand why there's Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. The next is, what is Rathayatra? Rathayatra literally means journey of the chariots. And so 5,000 years ago, there was a solar eclipse ceremony in Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is where the Gita was spoken. And so Krishna, Balaram, and Subhadra, and many of the Dwarka residents and the queens were going to go to Kurukshetra to attend the ceremony. And when the gopis and Radharani and all the residents of Vrindavan heard that Krishna is going there, they also made plans to go to Kurukshetra to meet Krishna. So they went on this journey and they met Krishna there. And when they saw Krishna, they didn't see him as he was in Vrindavan. Here he was in regal attire, big crowns, jewels, acting regal, right? Or royalty. And when Radharani saw this, she was not too pleased with it. She remembered Krishna in his simple yellow dhoti, wildflowers, a peacock in his hair, flute, and she was very upset. And she implored Krishna, please come back to Vrindavan. What are you doing like this? Come back to Vrindavan, let's enjoy the pastimes. And so the gopis and Radharani desired to pull the Lord on his chariot back to Vrindavan. And Krishna himself also desired to go back to Vrindavan. He was always thinking of the gopis and gopas. Although he was doing his duty there, his heart and mind was always with the Vrijavasis and the residents of Vrindavan. So Rathayatra actually represents this pastime of pulling the rope, pulling the chariots of Krishna back to Vrindavan. And that rope is the rope of love. Actually, Krishna cannot be pulled. He cannot be bound. If you remember, there's a story in Kartik month of Lord Damodar, which we won't speak about now, but that is also about binding with love. So Krishna can only be bound with love. He has everything. And another pastime is that Krishna pretends or does get sick 2 weeks prior to Rathayatra. Externally, he gets sick because he had a bath and he got a cold. But internally, the reason is that he is lovesick. He's wanting to, homesick, lovesick, wanting to go back and see his gopis. And so his servants try to cheer him up, and they create a procession where thousands of devotees and servants go with him, accompanying him on a chariot procession with chanting, drumming, etc. So that is another pastime of the Lord. And you might have seen that, Prabhupada also says that there's a spiritual reason for this Rathayatra festival. He says that Krishna is in our heart and our body is like a rath or a cart. The final reason, which I mentioned to you before, was that not everybody can come to the temple. Not everybody knows to come to the temple. So Lord Jagannath is so merciful that he himself leaves the temple to give us his darshan and mercy to the masses. So when he goes out to the temple, even here in Toronto or anywhere in the world, there are people who don't even know who Lord Jagannath is, yet they can see him, right, on the chariots. So that is his special mercy. You don't generally see any of the other deities going out, but Lord Jagannath does this as a special mercy, as a special favor. The other wonderful thing about Lord Jagannath is many of you may have noticed that he doesn't have any eyelids. He's got huge eyes, but no eyelids. Why is that? He is so merciful that anyone who comes to have his darshan, he doesn't blink. He sees each and every devotee that's coming to see him. Just such a wonderful, merciful Lord, right? Lord Jagannath. And our mood also should be reciprocal. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me. May Lord Jagannath always be the object of our vision. Right? He is being merciful to have our vision, like he's seen us, but this is the opposite. We should want to be seeing him. So Rathayatra has been celebrated for over 5,000 years in Jagannath Puri, where millions of people actually attend this annual festival. There are 3 huge chariots that are built every year with huge canopies that resemble temples, if you see them here. And Jagannath goes on one, Balaram on another, and Subhadra on another. It's an 8-day, multi-day festival. And they travel about 2 miles to the Gundicha temple. And the Gundicha temple actually represents Vrindavan. So that's the pastime. He's going from his temple, he's leaving there and going to Vrindavan to spend time with the gopis, to reunite with the gopis. And over 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya himself participated in this festival for many years. Lord Chaitanya is a combination of Radharani and the Lord, and he wanted to experience this love of Krishna. So he appeared as Lord Chaitanya, and he attended this festival, and we don't have a lot of time to talk about all the pastimes, but he would dance in front of each and every cart, and the devotees surrounding him would think that he was only dancing with them. He would personally clean the Gundicha temple. But if you think about it, it's very deeply meditative that you see Lord Chaitanya in the mood of Radharani, pulling Krishna himself. So Radharani is Krishna, but Krishna is pulling Krishna. It's a very deep thing to meditate on. Srila Prabhupada himself was also very fond of Rathayatra. When he was a very young boy of 5 years old, he would actually go to the train station and he would check the schedule to see when he can go to Jagannath Puri and what were the prices of the tickets. He wanted to go at the age of 5. Not only that, he wanted to build his own cart and have his own Rathayatra festival. And he was very, very serious about this, and he implored his father, let's build a cart. So they went to several carpenters to try to get this done, but some couldn't do it was very expensive, etc. So his father said, no, this cannot be done, let's go home. And on the way home, he was crying, just pouring in tears. And this old Bengali lady came and said, why is this boy crying? And so Gaur Mohan Dey explained that he wants to have a Rathayatra festival, he wants a cart. And she says, well, I actually have a cart. Isn't this amazing? I actually have a cart, come see. So they went to see this cart, and it was a mini cart, 3 feet tall. It was very old, but it was functional. So they purchased it, and Abe, as he was known then, fixed up the cart himself, painted it. His father helped put a canopy on it, built 16 columns on it, just replicating just like Jagannath Puri. And Abe went around to his neighboring mothers in the neighborhood and said, please cook for this festival. He announced about it, and he got all his neighborhood friends and children to participate in the festival. And just like Jagannath Puri, they did the festival for 8 days, and they had the chariot parade going around Harrison Road. And the adults were saying, what is this? They were telling his father, why weren't we invited? He said, oh, this is just child's play. They said, no, this is not child's play. This is a real Rathayatra. And Prabhupada continued this through his childhood. He continued to do this 8-day festival year after year after year. And of course we all know that Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness all over the world and to the West. And so of course he brought this auspicious festival to the West as well. The first Rathayatra festival was on July 9th, 1967 in San Francisco, 56 years ago. And Prabhupada personally participated in that festival. And not only did he participate in that festival, which was huge, but he also spread it and participated in places like Tokyo, Sydney, Los Angeles, New York. And since then, we have Rathayatra festivals all around the globe, cities and towns all over the globe, hundreds of Rathayatra festivals year after year after year because of the power of Srila Prabhupada. And in Toronto, our first festival was 51 years ago in 1972. At that time, we started with a very small wagon, which was decorated, and we had small Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, small Radha Krishna deities, and a picture of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. And the wagon was pulled through the residential streets of Toronto down to the beaches. So that was 1972. And in 1973, just 1 year later, we had a 40-foot chariot where you put Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra on. We left from St. George Street and Bloor Street down University Avenue to Nathan Phillips Square, and it was actually covered by the Toronto Star at that time. And so over the years, the Rathayatra Festival has grown from 1 chariot to 3 chariots, many devotees coming from cities and countries across the world, incorporating things like elephants and horses. And in the early days, the devotees would be very much hands-on. We'd actually build our own canopies, apply gold appliques on it, sew hundreds and hundreds of garlands, and actually decorate the carts with those garlands, have elaborate garlands made for Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And in the 80s, we would take the carts down to City Hall, Nathan Phillips Square, but eventually, and we were going down University Avenue, but in the 80s we started changing down, going down to Yonge Street, down to the harbor front, and then having our festivities at Center Island, which happens to this day. And at Center Island we have wonderful stage performances, exhibits, booths, a free feast, question and answers, and that happens for 2 days after the parade. And in the early 90s, a lot of effort was made. We were planning to have Rathayatra be one of the major events in Toronto. And so a lot of effort was made, and we had media coverage, advertising, newspapers, radio, television, the Globe and Mail covered it. We had many, many floats. And we had, according to the Globe and Mail, over 100,000 people attend the parade that year. It was one of the biggest. Bhakti Marg Swami actually said it was the biggest Rathayatra festival outside of Toronto. So this year, we want to make it the biggest Rathayatra festival. This year, we will be having our festival on July 14th, 15th, and 16th. It's now a 3-day festival. In Jagannath Puri, it's an 8-day festival, but here it's 3 days. The Friday is a 12-hour kirtan from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The Saturday is the actual Rathayatra parade and continuation to Center Island. And Sunday is a continuation of festivities on the Center Island. And this is your way to participate. It's fun, it's free, and it's fortunate. Now, how can you participate? You can participate in 3 ways. One is to spread the word. Tell your friends, your family, your acquaintances, anyone you know to come. We have a lot of brochures, flyers that you can hand out, you can take to work. Just tell everybody. So the first is spread the word. The second is service or seva, help out, volunteer. We need as many hands on deck to help out. And the third is to support in any way you can. So, please take advantage. Lord Chaitanya himself, who is Krishna himself, took advantage of this Rathayatra festival. Srila Prabhupada himself was so anxious and ecstatic to participate even as a young child. So get this mercy, join in any way you can. The Shastras say, Ratacha vamanam drista punar janma na vidyate. Simply by seeing the Lord on the chariot, one makes advancement to go back home, back to Godhead. And there's many such verses about getting rid of your sins by just pulling the chariot in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. So you can see how fortunate this is. So please participate. Thank you very much. Jai Jagannath, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you so much for that class. So there's a few announcements before we get Prashadam today. Actually, quite a few number of announcements. So today's cooks are Yogeshwar Das Prabhu and Samriti Devinasi. So please join me in thanking them during the service. Thank you. And we have 3 feast sponsors. So one in honor of Tina's birthday, the second to celebrate Krishna, and that was Rajvi family, and the third to honor Prabhudev and family their 12th death anniversary. So if we could chant the mantra 3 times, please, to thank the sponsors. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you. So just a gentle reminder that you can sponsor any Sunday feast or any TD Girl as you like.